Guys. It's good afternoon. It's Simon with ToughTrader.com. We're doing the trade review for uh, the 19th of October, end of day trade review. And so there's two goals out of the trade review. The first goal is to identify what we did well. The second goal is to identify what we or I did poorly in terms of reading the market, right? And then very specifically, I want to carry one thing out of there that I want to improve from the negative side of the ledger for tomorrow. And then, of course, reproducing the things that I did well and improve upon them if possible for the following day. So let me check first real quick. Audio, video, all good? Everyone can hear me okay? Brian, let me make sure. Ron, feedback okay? Great. Maybe not. All good. Okay, thank you, James. Brian, I do think that we can hit that. I do think you can make that upside push on NQ to the upside, right? So, and keep it in line with Mari gave me a very nice compliment, and it's what I've been working on. I wanted to make sure he said, specifically he said, one of your best days as far as clearly calling out trades with stops. The reasoning was also presented very clearly, and he said he managed to have a positive day as well, which is great. I'm happy to hear that. So let's kind of go from the beginning. Let's drag over let's look at this from the perspective first of overnight, and then we'll roll it into the day session. So let's start with ES, and we'll leave crude till the very end for those who want to see it. I know I don't have a bunch of crude traders in the room, so we'll start with ES. We'll roll over to NQ, and then we'll go from there. So if you look at, and I did not trade the Russell today, although the white zones worked really, really effectively, obviously, in the white zone today. Okay, so first of all, go to a higher time frame. Let's look at this from a 10-minute perspective. This is on for those of you that are in the room, this particular setup's is on my other computer. So, and then let's clear all the chart. So first of all, this is ES, right? So what you'll see is overnight, obviously around 3 in the morning, we had a pretty hard sell to the downside. So the first thing I like to do is see in that sell-off, from really the swing of that sell-off to here, what that profile looked like by itself. And you can see in that profile, volume went off in a couple of distinct places, but in particular, it went off at the top here. I'm going to show that off. Went off at the top here, and you can see when we ran into it, right? See how it slowed down when it hit the volume? And we had Globex low. We were never able to test 25.43.50. On a retest of 25, so the first thing that I want to take out of this is on a retest of 25.43.50, I want to take it long. So when I looked at this area right here where I know, so clearly what does this tell me? Like the first question is, what does that profile tell me when I look at it? The first thing that profile tells me on the pushdown is that everyone and their brother panicked right here, right? Because that's the only way, if you think about the emotion of how someone trades, right? Everyone puked right there. They're like, oh my gosh, we're down however many points we're down, and I can't take any more heat. And this is what it ends up looking like, is a big push of volume. Sometimes the profile varies. You get a big push of volume at the top, and then the selling just trickles off and dies off. So what that tells me is that until I get below 25.43.50, first of all, you'll notice we were unable to retest the puke point. So I'm very interested in grabbing that, right? The next thing is when we come in and look at ES, I want to know what's to the left, right? What does this whole profile look like as a whole? So let's go to a bigger picture, right? And if you remember yesterday, I posted a picture, and I had the 3-day point of control. I want to show you that. Let's just go to a 1 hour. See if that comes up any better. There we go. And let's pull it in for a couple of days. Okay, you see that huge consolidation area, right? Which is marked by a low down here, this low, which I'm always going to go and look. That's when I can easily look at an area and go, that's clearly my distinctive swing low. I know that unless I'm closing below that, and two things, closing below and impulsing lower, that's probably going to act as my support, right? So if I stretch this out a little bit, let's stretch it out, pivot down. And so I want a line behind there, Okay. So clearly, this is the point from which we broke out. That was my swing high. That this is a slow grind area of balance that we've had for many, many days. You can see clearly we failed to break balance. All we did is we broke out from the top of balance, right, which was up here at 2564, and all we did was traveled all the way down to the bottom. Additionally, if we look without including today's drawdown, right, so I'm just going to pull it right to the swing high from yesterday from the breakout point. If I look at all of this, right up to here, which essentially covers everything right up into the European session, you can see that that 25.49 was incredibly important. That I essentially have an equal distribution right here between 54, which we all know 55.54 was really hard to get through on the way up, if you'll recall from our trading, right? So the reason that's important, I don't want to overcomplicate it. Brian always reminds me very nicely. He's like, Simon, you tend to overcomplicate it. And he tells me, you have so much knowledge that it's hard to take that knowledge and practically apply it. So let's answer a question while we're going through this as if I were coaching. And I'll do it from the perspective of someone who doesn't have as in-depth a knowledge base as I have, right? That's important because see how there's a whole volume build. In general, this is the point of control. This is the other point of control. But see how the volume build comes all the way down here? Can everyone see that? Is that showing up on the screen clearly, Brian? Or can someone just shoot me a Y if everyone can see that? It is. Okay, cool. So in order to make an impulse move and get lower, we're going to have to impulse below this volume build, right? Now this is a large time frame, but we're going to impulse below and come back up into it and reject to move lower. But we have to at least make an impulse move below. And that's very difficult when you're starting from 2560, right? It took an enormous amount of energy to push through all this volume. So what volume means is that is places where people invested in emotionally and psychologically in decisions in both buying and selling decisions. And clearly in this particular stretch, the buyers won out, right? So if you think about it as a brick wall that's getting thicker and thicker, even with the news, which I found out later was the Catalonia, and then something came out from China with the yuan, right? Even with all of that, the best they were able to do is it took all that energy just to come down and test the bottom of that area. Therefore, I'm generally not bearish until we can break below and start testing some of this area back in. And then once we do, so I'll draw it out, right? Had we gotten down here, I would have wanted to see the pushes back into the bottom of that area act as resistance, just like, if you remember from a couple weeks ago, 25.54 to 25.55 kept acting as a brick wall, as a push to the downside, right? Same thing, and that's why we kept rejecting out of this area all the way through here till we finally broke out, right? This is an attempted trap in, and through this process, what the market's telling us, right, the other part of that history. So now we know what the volume means through here, right? I've answered that. So the direct response to that is, I know that unless I can push through this build of volume from this micro composite, right, unless I can push through an impulse move below, we're not generally bearish. That's what it would have taken to break the market. And we know that the rotation size, even on a bearish day, particularly at the top of the market, is going to be a 20 to 30 point push maximum without unless the fundamental news is truly just earth-shaking. Even bad news will get absorbed in that 20 to 30 point push, right? So if you look from where we were yesterday, we were trading 25.62. We traded all the way down to 25.42-ish. That's a 20 point rotation down from the high. And so now you know that that's a truism, right? You can take that and you can apply that to other parts of the ES market and you go, okay, that's true. Okay, that part is true, that we have this volume build. We have to push down through it in order to get lower. And I know that about 20 points, which has been true since I've been running this room and since I've been trading ES for a long time, 20 points has always been true and still remains true to the downside. Okay, so the perspective, so now I'm going to bring this back in, right? So the perspective of going to a smaller time frame, when I was looking this morning, was this area became this white zone right here. Now, someone in the room pointed out something early this morning and asked, I chose to short NQ instead of ES, even though they were both opening, ES was opening up underneath the white zone. And it was Brian. Brian goes, hey, should I short ES, 25.52.50, which was reasonable, right? So now let's go to practical application. This area, we know that 54.52 is right in the bottom third of that volume build, right, of the picture we were just looking at. So we know from that volume build, right, Brian, what was my, so now I want to tie in why I didn't short, why I chose NQ versus ES, right, and why I didn't short ES. So just like on other days earlier this week when I know I get a 10-point rotation, but even without the 10-point rotation, even in the more narrower volatility, I've been getting 6-point rotations. So the problem was that if I from where we opened, which was 25.50, if I short 25.52.50, had we just opened and it had been a normal open without a massive gap down where range had expanded overnight, then Brian, I would have been more than eager to take this short for a 1 or 2 point trade out of the white zone, right? But because we opened right underneath the white zone and tick was negative 1,000 and I did not know whether we would drive straight up or straight down, I would have preferred a bigger stretch like from here, right? If we'd opened at 25.46, I would have said, yeah, white zone automatically. That's an easy trade, right? But not when we opened 1.5, 2 points, because I would have had to take the risk that we were just going to blast right through and that the market would lift with the negative tick all the way through. So just dissecting what we were looking for on the open, yes, I was looking for it to roll down, but I was also more interested in playing the long side. Additionally, Globex low overnight had landed right into this yellow zone, which was almost 20 points down, and we were into single prints. And what I would have preferred to have done would have been to take the long on ES out of this location. I would have preferred to roll down into this location for a push back towards closing the half gap from yesterday's high to today's low. That would have been the preferred trade for me on ES. It just didn't develop. Okay. Anyone have any questions over that stage of ES? Because that's exactly what I was thinking on ES. And then my goal was, if I was going to try a short, would have been in this 25.52.50 to 25.54. I think I said 25.51.75. I forget where we were because there was a little build right against here. You see where we rejected down right here. So I might have been a little bit early, but these two locations were my short locations. And when we came into the white zone, so remember, when we got into the white zone, let's talk about that for a second. I was looking at a short on ES. I was looking at a short in NQ. The reason I covered the short in NQ, which I'll cover in a second, but I also chose not to short ES, is because what I was looking for, see how we had swift rejection out of this 25.46, right? I was looking for this price action. If you'll flip it upside down and put it up here, that's what I wanted to occur. Test in and whip out. See how we're getting the wicks out of that area? The fact that it parked itself in here and stayed for 20 minutes did not mean that it could not roll down, but it meant I wasn't interested because of what this price action was reflecting, which was two-way price action moving up and down. And see, even in this area here, I'll get rid of the 50-60s. In this area here, when we were in this area, we were still getting wicks pushing down with quick snaps back up, right? So when we got into the white zone, even though I was thinking short, primarily on NQ, but on ES as well, when the behavior made a distinctive change from what was off to the left to this area, and it immediately caused me to get cautious, and this is what caused me to turn bullish and said, I hope, okay, and it was when we were in here, again in another conversation with Brian, I said, the price action looks bullish. Now, I want to make a quick input there. When I say the price action looks bullish, that means that does not mean I'm looking to get long at the high in resistance, right? What it means is I'm now hoping that the market will pull back and give me long location. And what I was hoping for when we were in here is now I'm going to take my fib tool, draw up a 50-60, and now I get multiple pieces of convergence. Do you see how when we came in this morning, we came in right into the naked volume point of control and we responded up? Everyone see that right there? Okay, then when we definitively closed behind, see how we pushed back up and had resistance, right? And so this shows the importance of the naked volume point of control. Because notice once we were above the naked volume point of control, see how we tested? Here, I'll open this up a little bit because I know it's shallow. See right here where we tested down from above directly into the naked volume point of control. We tested here, we backside tested, we definitively closed above, then we backside. So that's a micro pattern that repeats all the time at critical locations. Okay, it's not necessarily tradable, but once we get above a key level like this, what I wanted to happen, so for people who were aggressive on the short side, this is what they were doing with the 50-60. No, I don't think anyone in the room did this. But swing high, swing low. Okay, so see what happened there? We pushed into the 50-60, but now you had a barrier behind you in the naked volume point of control, and it acted as, and it absorbed anyone who was trying to short here. And then what happens all the time at the 50-60? We sucker in retail traders at the 50 and push to the 60. So it was imperative on this push up, in order for the 50-60 to have worked, what we would have needed is a push so that that 50 retrace, see how this 50, see when I drag that all the way down? So that that 50-60 would have ended up lining up underneath the naked volume point of control, and that would have been a massive assistance. That would have been a massive assistance to the short. By the way, for those who are still long in the last 15 minutes of the day, NQ, right, I would drag your stops up. You have no idea who's lurking on the sell side of this thing. I think it'll push up, but I have dragged my stops up now to 60-80. I'm giving this thing 6 3/4 points left on my trailer, but I will walk out with 60-80. So that was, and I'll go through that trade in just a minute, right? So this was the first sign that buyers were back in control. This was the point where they tried to pull back down, and now we had the white zone to contend with. And when we didn't get the immediate rejection out of the white zone, I turned bullish. That was my cue without the rejection out of the white zone, which was a critical area, and we clearly rejected sharply out of it off the open. I knew that there was a problem. I got concerned, right? And then I knew I didn't want to be short, and I was hoping for a pullback in both ES and NQ, and the logical place to push back in would have been to gap fill right over here, primarily prior day's low, and then into gap fill, which is exactly what the I don't think ES is even down on the day. Let me look at my dome. Are we down or up? ES is down 2.5 points. Okay. Does anyone have any questions over ES? That was my logic and my reasoning behind it. We didn't break the volume. We didn't break the volume build from the multi-day micro composite. We were unable to hold below the naked volume point of control. The white zone, which we rejected right out of the gate, which was the plan, to look for a short out of the gate into the white zone with rotation, so only NQ offered that setup, right? And then when we consolidated in the white zone, unable to pull back when NQ pulled back was the sign that I thought we'd make an additional push to the upside. So that's pretty much all the pieces. What I would want to do better in ES, assuming we have rotation size again, what I would have wanted to do better, I obviously had no location here, and I would have been more than happy to go in this 53 to 39. I was more than prepared to go long here. So I don't think I did anything wrong there. And I think I'm all right. I think most days will serve me with less than a 2-point rotation, not taking a zone, right? Particularly off the high volatility right out of the gate on a product that hasn't been moving that well, right? I don't think I did anything poorly there, and I certainly didn't short it up here, which was fine. And I was prepared to take a 50-60 back on this particular trade. So I really have nothing I'd want to improve. I sure would like to go back and try to figure out why we chose 25.46, but that's going to take more work than we have time for right now. But I'll go back and look at that and figure out. The only trade I would have liked to have done is see how we had that big hammer, that wick right there, is to get long against the low there. We did that exact same thing in NQ, and I probably should have taken the same advantage of ES. Also, if you'll note, the improving tick, as we were pushing down, I didn't note it till it was fairly late. I think I noted it down here, but I really didn't make the gear shift in my head when we were at the lows that, hey, tick is improving all the way through this push down on the S&P, and that's probably going to result in a pop, because this ended up being a 12-point pop, which is probably the best trade that's been offered in ES in a long time. So that's what I would have improved. That was, I think, the only thing I really missed this morning. And even with that, I would have taken it if we could have pushed down into this 25.43, just like we did in the Globex session. I would have been long out of this area unless we closed behind 25.39. My plan was to pop it up out of there. Let me check Skype, see if any of the members have questions. Brian, I don't understand the last comment there at 240 because you tweeted props for the call on NQ, right? Let's queue up NQ here real quick. Okay. So Brian's absolutely right. I did prep the room for the short early in the morning on the Twitter feed. Let's see if I have this here. Tweets. I did say early in the morning. Let me go back to 6 a.m. Okay, so I said backside test of the white zone at 2552, perfect for rejection. So again, my only reasoning for that was from where we opened, it was only a 2-point rotation. I guess if you considered the overnight low into that area, but it already got tested from the overnight back into 2552 before we got to the open. But you're correct, I did tweet out the 2552 was, and then I said right into 2543, backside test at 2552 was perfect for rejection. I agree with that. So I thought you did a great job. Brian, that was a great tip of the hat to you. That was great. The only reason I didn't take that, again, small rotation, otherwise I've been all over it. Let me jump to the other computer, and let's do NQ really quick. Clean that chart up. Okay, we can see all of this. Let's go to a higher time frame really quick so we get a good look at what's been going on there. Okay, and let's bring it in a bit. Okay, so this is a little bit different picture than ES. So see when we see before when we were pushing up on NQ, we ended up with this little downtrend that got broken. That was the upside break, right? So this is really the push that I'm interested in, what's going on here, but it looks a little bit different. And I know the backside prior support of that area was approximately right here, right? We ended up with a double top right in there. That 6013, again, there's a big support sitting right there at 6,000, 6,010, somewhere in that area, right? And that makes sense. Again, that 6013 was the top end of resistance. Top end of resistance, we had basically a triple top before we broke out of that location. That 6013 all the way to 6,000 is going to be a super prime area, right? So when I go through here and I look at this whole draw from swing low to swing high, right? Okay, that's basically my high, right? Draw it out. Okay, so when we're in here, now let's go widen it out a bit so we can see it. Oh, when I do that, I lose it. I don't want that. There we go. So let's draw out those areas that are critical. Okay. Big piece right there, 59.96. Again, we already know that area is critical. Big low volume node right here, right, at 60.36. And another one right underneath it again at 60.13, which was the breakout area. Makes perfect sense. Big volume build right here at from 60.55 to right here. Right, so off a really big time frame, but 60.76 to 60.55. See that huge, what is essentially is the volume point of control of this whole run, right? So remember, just the same concept in NQ as it is in ES. In order to break down, first of all, this is my first prominent last major swing low. Maybe a little spot of T here. Okay, and this is my minor point of control up here. We'll color it. It's pretty thin, right? So see, in order to break down, see how we got above, failed, got above, held, right in there. We'll color this another color, I don't know, blue, I guess. Right, so see, as soon as we finally cleared underneath this volume build, we were able to travel right next to the volume build. Now if we come back and we bring this down to a 10-minute picture, right? Okay, now look how the market worked. We pushed right into this volume build, right? Now it didn't give you a specific location, right? That's a killer. That's an $800 zone, right? And you can see we tried to break right here on the backside, and we were unable to do so, right? I'm going to spread that out. Right? See how we pushed down, we absorbed perfectly at that 60.55, right? We came back up, we opened back up from the point where we broke down, right? Using all our tools at our disposal, right? We came down, here's the 50.60. So you can see right off the open, which I didn't catch by the way, not only did we from the swing high, from basically, and if you measured it from London high, which would have been right here, it would have looked like this, by the way. So slightly different, but pretty much the same thing, right? So from either swing high in Asia over here or London high, whatever your preference is, there's not a right way to draw that, right? There's just areas. You can see we opened down and then we pushed right back up and then made a push for the low, right? So a couple things have to happen in order to break out, right? This is just like an intraday 5-minute chart. So a couple things. We know when we draw this profile through here, right? I now want to know what that looks like. So I basically go from London open, and I'm just going to look at this first part right here, right to the low. Okay, I can see that I had a boatload of volume build on this profile from this breakdown right here. And see how we pushed up and we backside tested that area where we had the volume build. This only is isolating this particular breakdown of this particular area. So we're just taking a little block out of the total picture and isolating it, kind of like looking at a cell under a microscope, right? So when we looked at that, we saw that we had a little volume here, but we had a big build here. So see when we pushed up, right? And then we pushed right back down into it. Okay, so this is the same trade I did in NQ in the afternoon, by the way. It's the identical trade I did in NQ when we pushed up and I reloaded at that 70, 68, 70, wherever I took the long again, just after 11 a.m. or 11:30. This was the same. It was a replay of that trade, right? And you can see it pushed back up. We make a big volume push at the open, attempting to get over European swing high post news, right? And then we obviously found responsive sellers, and that was right into a critical area from another draw that I had, right? So when we pushed down, they made a very big attempt. You see we swept the volume node over here, and what this picture changes, if I draw this picture out more considerably till right before we got to the open, the picture changes. So if I come from, let's say here, 2 a.m., and I come up right to 8:20, okay? So now what you see how the volume switched around? The volume was all at the base prior, but see after the news came out, we came back in. See how this was poorly auctioned? And you can see visually how we grind, I'm not sure what the proper use of that term. We slow grind through this area, right? And we built a chunk of volume, right? So now I know, right, what does that tell me? What's the application of that information? I know that if I push above, a backside test of that volume should hold, number one, right? But number two, that's resistance until it's broken. That's the second thing I know. So remember, I already had another location based on my charting prior to that volume ever building there. This is new information that I'm adding to my analysis when I'm coming in on the day, right? I'm just take a quick peek at my NQ because we're about to close. Just to keep myself on the safe side, I'm moving my stop to 60.89 and a quarter on my trailer. I'm hoping we really bash it on the close and they short squeeze up, but 60.89 at a quarter. I will close out this entire position, the last 5 minutes of market, which is at a 310 to 315 area. I will close out my trailers, or they'll hit me at 60.89, which is fine, no big deal. That's a great trade right there. Okay, so on the open, I took a shot. Now, what was my risk here, right? My risk was that if we just drove straight up, there was nothing to help me on the top side, right? I'd have been, if I'd gotten that short wrong with a negative 1,000 tick, which is what I shorted into, I'd have been totally screwed on this. It'd have been a full 10-point stop. I want everyone to understand that, so you understand why my reluctance to call a trade, or my reluctance to say someone else besides myself should be super aggressive at the open, is because this is a great way to lose a lot of money right out of the gate. Okay, there we are. We're closed. And I'm going to move that to 90 now from 89. So I'm risking 4 points. My trailer. And we'll just leave it at that. There we go. And I'm hoping, and I have 6100 as my exit. I'm hoping we tag that right there on the close, but we may hit 6090 before we hit 6100. Either way, I'm very happy with that trade on NQ. Nice job, Brian. I take it you held that all day. You held that from at least midday on the pullback. Is that correct, sir? Nice job. Nice job. Good work. Okay, so now when we're down in here, I want to start this whole process over again, right? So see when we pushed in, this was our bogey, right? Because we knew we had a big chunk of volume. When everyone panicked, we had a big chunk of volume down here, right at the low. So see how they pushed into that volume and unable to break? They made 2 attempts over 20 minutes. I think we're on a 10-minute chart. Pretty sure this is a 10-minute chart. We made over 20 minutes. We made 2 pushes in. I got a little nervous on the trade, right? And then we reversed. Now notice the other part that's important and what you're collecting information on. Look at the size of the engulfing bar. All night long, right? And if we go back through here, all the way back over here, this was the last. These were the last of the engulfing bars. See when we had engulfing bar up here and we ended up pushing? This is the biggest engulfing bar. Now, I made a mistake and going to what I would like to do better. I did not wait for the 50-60 back to short again. I had an area, which I'm not going to go through the build because I'm going longer than I wanted to go, but I had an area in here. I shorted 60.78, right? And you can see that technically it would have worked. We pushed back to 60.70, but this was essentially my area right here, this 60.78, 60.80. So see this bar where it closed above? Okay, remember when I showed you when we just close above levels? See like how this bar looks pretty innocuous right here, but it just closes over 60.83, which became the new level. See how when you, if you can't see, see if I can take you right to that bar. Okay, see how innocuous that bar looks like? You're like, oh, what's the big deal? It closed one over, right? That was all it took to turn this market, right? So that immediately, oh wait, that's early. Sorry, here, I'll show you. Here it comes. There we go. So see that rejection? Okay, see that one bar right there, 60.83? Okay, that one bar changes the entire perspective because it got behind. We were finally able to close above, where traders earlier made a significant investment and not being able to get above this first breaking bar to the left. See how we kept it the close below that bar? So the same thing happened here. When I shorted into this 60.78, I wanted fast rejection out of here and I wanted closes underneath this level for a pushback to the low. I knew when this bar formed right here and we pushed back up, right, whether that's a 5 or 10 minute, either way, I knew that my odds, not necessarily that I would lose money, but I knew that my odds diminished on that short working significantly. I realized that it did eventually work, but not before pushing almost all the way up to 60.90, and I think I took a 3-point loss on this trade. Don't hold me to it. I know part of it was 2 and the other part was 3. I think let's just call it 3 points, right? So this also changed my perspective because remember, this is when the ES is consolidating in the white zone instead of rejecting, right? So that's giving me information. Okay, so now I'm pulling my 50-60 back. And if you recall, this is when I said, I think I was pretty clear. If I can pull back into 60-70, I won a long. That's what I said, and that's exactly what I did. I took 60-70. When we pushed from 60-70 back to 60-77, 60-78, I took scales in there. And I said, if we can push back into the wick of this candle without going into an in-depth conversation as to why I did that, if we can push back in while holding the swing low, I will re-add what I closed out at 77, 78, 76, whatever it was that I closed that out at, and I will add back up. I added back in at 72, I believe, and I kicked all that out at 78 to 80, and then I scaled on the way up, and then I left the rest, right? I said, okay, I'm paid no matter what. I scooted my stop up just below this point, and I said, I'm paid no matter what, and I hope it goes. And that's exactly what we have now, is that push into 60.95, right? So what is that? What's the takeaway from that? First of all, you didn't have to trade at the beginning of the day in order to make money. You did not have to trade at the highest risk point of the day to make money. Number two, the large engulfing bars. I've been pointed this out time after time, not in a like parent. I've pointed this out 100 times to you, right? But the pattern keeps repeating, right? Large engulfing bars after big rotations down tend to tell you to stop shorting. That's what I would improve about tomorrow, taking in from tomorrow. My worst decision was shorting up here. Again, it always looks that way afterwards because it didn't work out, right? But really, I should have said that's my largest bar. And if you look, this bar not only was a 50-60 retrace, but it was probably pushing back into the volume build of this push, would be my guess, right? I could draw up a profile, but again, I'm running behind and I want to get home at a reasonable time tonight. So here was the push in, right? And I should have turned off my short, which I did. You notice I didn't try the short multiple times. I tried it one time. And you'll also notice I didn't lament. So this is from just a notebook journal. I didn't not lament or get upset when the price pushed back in, because I'm more than happy to take a 3-point stop when my wins are coming in at 10, 20, and 30 points to the upside, right? I'm more than happy to use that ratio, right, to repeatedly try trade locations. By the way, I'm not going to cover CL, guys, because it's getting too late, okay? And then, so what I'd want to do is want to be more cognizant of that massive up bar, which, by the way, Bill, thank you, pointed it out to me right away, and I still didn't process it quick enough not to take the short. But I did, and then the best thing that I did today actually wasn't the short here or the long here. Both of them were good. The best trade I had here was actually right here, and I'll tell you the reason why. Psychologically, that was a challenge for me, because I got upset that I took a stop here at all, and I had to bring myself back to being flatlined emotionally. Not flatlined, but non-twisted by the desire to get the money that I gave back here, which was very little, right? But I had a combination of things. Not only did I scale 100%, but then I flipped and went short after missing this engulfing bar, and I was upset with myself. So I had to get back to flat and bring myself back to a place where I could take the trade in a normal fashion. I had a logical way, which was following my process, right? I don't know where my mouse went. It's totally detached here. Let's see. I've lost my mouse, guys, so I don't know what happened there. Oh, there it is. Okay. I had to get back to a baseline. I said that I turned bullish. I had to focus on what I needed the market to do, which was it gave me a gift in coming into my 50-60. And I had to conquer my emotional challenges internally, which said, hey, if you get swept to the downside here, you'll give back everything you made over here, right? Because remember, I got short, but then I got long early and got stopped. I used the 10 points I got here and gave it back right over here and had to reload again at the low, right? Which was good, but it was harder here because I was tired, and I had to really go back through my notes and reiterate that we broke the last consolidation area, push above. I go through this in the room all the time. The first 50-60 back is a high odds, and then the next thing that I did extremely well is I did not allow the influence of the market being down and that we've been up so many days. I did not turn bearish, right? So that allowed me to leave my trailer all the way up till apparently the end of the day. We'll see where we are in 2 minutes here, but I'll start kicking it out here in 2 minutes. So the goal for tomorrow, right, will be not to chase trades. Focus on the specific setup locations, just like we did today, right? When things go wrong, the stops will be smaller, right? The exchange for the stops being smaller in the room. Like I said, we're pointing out entry, exit, stop, and the stops tend to be sub 10 points until we get into really high volatility, right? Like this one was 3 points, right? But here's the downside of having a tighter stop. If I have a tighter stop, more often I'm going to see that trade work out. And had I left the larger stop, right? Had I left the larger stop, the trade would have, quote, worked, right? And then what that forces you to do, a lot of people to do, is going to start clicking again or getting the seller's remorse or buyer's remorse or whatever remorse that you have that you should have stayed in it. So my goal for tomorrow, so I will continue to do this because I know that over even the intermediate term and short term, smaller stops, when we have the ability to gain 10 and 20 point rotations out of that, as long as you don't overclick, means you take one shot per area, right? You take a shot, and you put your hands in your pocket, and you wait till the next area comes back up, right? This way you don't rack up. It doesn't do you any good to take 3 shots with 3-point stops and end up with a 10-point loss, right? Then you're still in the same hole, just with more commissions. So you're going to have to accept, and I wrote about this extensively in my journal, that when I take a stop in an area, I'm going to have to go, that's disappointing, and roll right over to the next trade, which is exactly what I did today. So that was the good. The area I performed poorest in was recognizing that this was the reversal bar. Should have caught that for the push back up. And I think I can be honest with myself and say I would have been long ES just like I was yesterday had we pushed into support zone. So that's it. Any questions? I think I spotted the opportunity, the process, and what that means to you as a trader, and why these different areas, why these different concepts are important for application during the day. And just like anything else, I've been doing this for 20 years, right? And I still have to work at keeping each piece separate in my head. So as you learn to trade, give yourself time to process and then practice away and go and look for examples. If you turn that picture enough times, right? If you turn it enough times, it eventually will unfold for you in real time, and it'll be much easier and less stressful, because you'll know what it should do based on that. I see one question pop up. Okay, the question was, do I think I made a mistake not shorting ES out of the gate? And again, I don't, because I don't think I needed some kind of rotation. It was just 2 points. I would do the same choice again, given the option. I'm offering 6,100 here, and it has 1 minute to hit it. If I don't get 6,100, I'll just start in the next minute. I'll just start offering out between here and the close. Okay, thank you all very much. Congratulations. A lot of guys in the room had record days, right? A lot of guys learned a lot in the room. We did really well as a group and as a team, right? And everyone kept their heads about them, and really proud of you guys. It's hard work to get it all put together in one package. Okay, I got a position to close. I'll talk to you later, guys.